Hi guys, can you let me know if you can hear me right now? Because that's the one thing I'm never sure works until we start. Can anybody hear me? Is my audio working okay? Can you guys let me know? In the chat, maybe? Yes? Okay, you'll let me know if you can't hear me. But I'm so excited that you guys are here. We're gonna have more people saying, okay, Leslie says yes, good, you guys can hear me. We are doing chocolate and wine today. So I hope you guys are ready. I hope you got your emails packed with all the information, your shopping list of things to go out and buy, your chocolates, your wines, and you got everything set up. Anju and I have our little setups going here. We've got, I'm gonna try and show you. Okay, Avi's on, awesome. I've got my 4 wines lined up, and then I have this little fancy platter that I put my chocolates on. And amazing, Andrea, Josh and Andrea, Scott, you guys are ready. Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys. So everybody let me know where you're coming in from. It's always cool to see people in different time zones, different everything. Last time we had someone who came on from London, so it was very late over there, so I was mindful of that. And then we also had somebody with a bunch of toddlers playing around. All the mommies were together drinking their wine, and all the toddlers were playing in the middle because it was only 5 o'clock on the West Coast, so the kids were still awake. So we've got all kinds here. Siobhan, awesome, from Boston, wonderful, same time zone. So guys, this, maybe I say this every time I do a tasting, but this is really my new favorite tasting that I'm doing, because this tasting is just really all about the actual tasting experience. I'm not going to give you a lot of geeky information about the fermentations and things like that of the wines. This is really about experiencing and tasting and be able to have this conversation, this back and forth of what do you guys taste? I don't taste this, or I do, and all of your questions and everything like that, which is the huge, huge benefit of being able to do something live together. Good? Sound like a plan? Okay, so amazing. Bryce is here too. Awesome. Oh, I love seeing so many familiar, wonderful names. And Anusha and Krish from San Francisco. And your daughter is hanging out without completing her homework. Sorry about that. But it's good to know that kids are in the room. I'll watch my language. Anyways, my mom's going to be on, so I'll watch my language anyways. Okay, so I'm looking at my to-do list. So you guys are letting me know your name. And then I wanted to give a little plug. You guys are already part of this wine tasting, so you already know the benefits, or at least the draw of doing a wine tasting. But I wanted to tell you a little bit more about why I think wine tasting is the absolute best way to both learn about wine, but to be able to enjoy your wine more. As you guys know, I've worked in the wine business for a very long time now. I've been doing these wine tastings for over 20 years. Some of the people in this tasting will probably be ones that started out with me when I was doing them in my college dorm room 22, 23 years ago. I think Anju probably was too, my husband. And so through all those experiences, I've done wine tastings for British royalty. I've done wine tastings in Julia Child's house. I've done all sorts of different things and worked as a sommelier. And what I keep coming back to is that you can study about wine. You can study all the maps. You can study the books. You can take a lot of classes. But at the end of the day, it is a sensory experience. So there is nothing that is going to help you understand wine better than doing actual tasting. And in my opinion, doing tasting with someone who can guide you through and give you some of the language for what you're tasting and help you through wherever it is you get stuck or scared or whatever it is when it comes to wine tasting. So that's what we're going to do today. The other thing I have to say about why wine tasting is so wonderful is that a lot of people come and tell me after they do wine tastings with me that it kind of changes their whole experience of life. Maybe not so big, but really they come back and they tell me like, oh, Dini, after the wine tasting I did with you, I started smelling the fruits and vegetables in the market more. And I noticed the flowers much more. And I just kind of get an experience of my life that's maybe a little bit different than the way I looked at things before. And if you think about it, appreciating things, appreciating smells and flavors and life, I would say is a practice. It's a muscle. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to build up that muscle. We're going to work really hard, and we're going to build the muscle of appreciating things and appreciating life. And what better to do that with than wine, in my opinion. So that's the game plan for today. So, okay, let me just check and see who else has joined us. Alma, amazing. Guys, I did a video with Alma all about making a tres leches cake. She's a wonderful, wonderful baker, so check that out. Okay, so first things first, in appreciating life, we've got to do a toast. So cheers to all of you. Cheers for showing up, and cheers for getting it all together, whether you showed up with the wines or not. Yes, Andrew, you can toast with me. He's wondering whether or not we should toast, but cheers to everybody. Take a moment to just take a sip and enjoy your wine. I'm starting out with a cava, so that's perfectly delicious. And now that you've had a sip of wine the regular way, we are going to taste wine the wine taster's way. And some of you may have done this in wine classes or things like that, that you've done before. Rebecca, I know you have. But we're gonna, I don't know, I feel that the way I taste wine is a little bit different, so you guys can get an appreciation in this way. Or at least I'll explain to you maybe why you do some of the things that you do. So hopefully you've had a sip of, ooh, you have a rosé sparkling cava. I love it, Leslie. So we're gonna taste wine. You've already had a sip of it the way you would probably normally sip it. And just like I did, I just, took a sip of it, wasn't really thinking about the wine or paying attention to it. And now we're gonna taste it kind of the wine taster's way, or the way I like to taste. And I want you guys to note whether or not the wine tastes different to you when you taste it this way. Okay, so the first thing is to raise your glass, to hold the glass up. And I always like to hold the glass by the stem or the base, mainly because if you hold the wine like this or like this, the way I used to, you change the temperature of the wine. And the temperature at which you drink wine makes a huge difference in your experience and your pleasure associated with it. So hopefully you guys saw my advice on, how to get your wine to the right temperature. And you don't want to change that by warming it up. So grab your glass. Okay, amazing. Then grab your glass and give it a swirl. Because what we want to do is all of the smelling compounds that you get in wine are volatilized, or they become more intense, more pronounced when you introduce air to them. So have you guys ever thought like, I can't smell anything in my wine? Like, what are all those wine tasters talking about? Well, if you swirl the wine, you're actually going to get a little bit more of it to just open up and intensify those smells. So go ahead. If you're not used to swirling, you can put your hand down, or you can put the stem onto the table and just pretend like you're drawing circles with it. Give it a swirl. And yes, you can even do this with your sparkling wine. You probably will lose a little bit of the bubbles, but for me, the trade-off is perfectly worth it to be able to smell the wine so much more, which you do. So after you swirl, the important thing is you stick your nose in and you actually smell. And then pause. Because here's what I find. I don't know what your experience was when you just took a little sniff, but a lot of times when people smell, all of a sudden, like, our brains start working and we start to maybe even freak ourselves out. We say to ourselves like, oh, what is it that I smell? What is it that I taste? Or whatever it is. And we don't let ourselves just get like a very body experience of the smelling experience itself. So I always say just pause for a moment, because if you didn't know this, the olfactory, our senses of smell, are very tied to memories. It's actually the strongest, perception that we have that's tied to memory. So if you find yourself just kind of getting lost in the smell and allowing yourself to just experience it before you judge it, before you ask yourself, what do I smell? You might even have a memory that comes up. You might have a memory of a specific fruit or food that you've had, or you might have a memory of your grandmother's kitchen or something else. And I think that's one of the really nice things about experiencing wine, is all the variety of smells that you can get. So now we taste. And you want to take the wine in. I'm going to do this with a non-sparkling wine because it's a little bit easier to do. So you may want to do that. You're going to take the wine in your mouth and you're going to suck in some air. because a lot of tasting is actually smelling, and you can smell things differently when they're in your mouth versus they're just up through your nose. Because when you smell through your nose, you're just purely getting it transferred through air. When it's in your mouth, you get, and hopefully this won't gross anybody out, but you get the interaction of your saliva, your personal body chemistry's specific saliva with the wine, and that actually can have an effect and change the aromas. And then when you suck in the air, it's going to send all of those smells up to your nasal passages, and you're going to be able to smell and get a whole deeper experience of the wine. So I kind of make a little trough with my tongue, suck in the air, and it goes like this. And you can do that. If you're with other people and you don't want to taste for fear of actually spitting out the wine by accident, that's okay. But if you guys are willing and game, give it a try. And then I would love to know from you after that, and after you've taken a moment to also kind of pause and savor that, what was your experience of tasting the wine this way? Did you guys notice any difference when you just tasted it in the beginning when we said a toast and a cheers versus how you tasted it now? If anyone wants to share their thoughts in the chat, you're welcome to, or if you're just taking a moment to experience it and enjoy it, that's wonderful as well. Okay, so now you've tasted the wine. What we're going to do is we're going to take one chocolate, and I'm going to give you, that was intense. Okay, awesome, Leslie. I'm glad you noticed a difference. And we're going to do a chocolate tasting too. I'm not an expert in chocolate, but I did research and talked to some people about the proper ways to chocolate taste. So we're going to do a proper chocolate tasting. And then for those of you who have multiple wines, of course we have multiple chocolates, we are going to take the same chocolate, which I'm going to have you start with the most sweet chocolate, the milk chocolate, or if you have a toffee or some other kind of even sweeter chocolate than that, you could start with that, or a white chocolate. Definitely start with the white chocolate. Start with whichever is your sweetest, and take that sweetest chocolate and taste all 4 of the wines with that one chocolate. And then we're going to do the same thing and repeat it with all the other chocolates. So that's kind of the route we're going to go, and I'll explain to you more as we go along why we're doing that. So, okay, Scott says definitely better the second time. I know, I agree. For me, this is, I mean, people can say like, okay, this is like the snobby or the silly way that wine tasters taste a wine. But there's really a reason behind the things that we do. And for me, the reason always comes down to how am I experiencing and enjoying and relishing that wine even more? Because remember, that's the muscle we're building. So, what we're going to do is now take your chocolate in your hand and do something kind of funny. This is the equivalent of swirling your glass of wine, is you're going to rub the chocolate between your fingers. And when you do that, you're kind of awakening some of the scents and the aromas in the chocolate. Okay, Tanya says, the party is here in Denver, but you're a little late getting on the chat. Okay, you're enjoying the cava and the milk chocolate. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I love it. Tanya's got like a whole party in her house going over there. So rub your chocolate, give it a sniff. Actually, that smells good. I didn't think milk chocolate smelled like much, but that really does taste yummy. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the chocolate. Oh, sorry, Anju, I have a little chocolate. You can taste some of the chocolate. And stick a piece in your mouth and hold it on your tongue and press your tongue up against the roof of your mouth. And then you're just going to let the chocolate kind of melt in your mouth and get a really nice experience of just what that chocolate tastes like on its own. Good job. Wonderful. Gotta love milk chocolate. It's so sweet and kind of just sinfully good. As the chocolate melts, I shouldn't have taken such a big piece. As the chocolate melts, you can just enjoy the chocolate and have it on its own. Or you can also start playing with, even when it's in your mouth, you could start playing with tasting the different wines too, to see how that changes your experience of the chocolate. I find that I don't want to eat a ton of chocolate. I like to have a little bite, a little morsel of it, and really enjoy that piece. So I would rather take that one piece, that one bite, and taste it against all the different wines. I also maximize my wine to chocolate ratio that way. So I'm going to go for the cava. Ooh, really interesting. So you guys, Tanya, you guys have a cava too. And Mark, oh, you guys are drinking, Scott and Rebecca are also drinking some cava. I don't know. And Leslie's also drinking cava. Amazing. So I don't know what your experience was of that. But for me, it was really nice because I don't love it when chocolate is super sweet. So cava, most sparkling wines, but especially cava and champagne, they tend to have a high level of what's called acid in it, acidity, which is the stuff that makes your mouth water. It's in lemonade. It's in, you know, a lot of citrusy things. And that acid, to me, is a perfect contrast for the milk chocolate. So I really enjoyed that combination. I like how it does that. Yeah, you felt refreshed after sipping the cava. Anusha, that's exactly the way I feel. There's like a heaviness, a richness, a fattiness to the milk chocolate because it has a higher milk content to it. And that texture and that flavor and that heaviness just gets lightened up and refreshed when you have something with bubbles to it. And you also have something with acidity to it. So go ahead, repeat the same thing if you have the dry rosé. And by the way, you guys can drop. Avi and I are having Cabernet Sauvignon with the milk chocolate. Haven't gotten to that yet, but I'm excited for that. I like Cabernet Sauvignon and milk chocolate, and chocolate in general. And you're drinking Shiraz with the milk chocolate and it tastes great. Oh, that is so good. Yeah, because I think Shiraz just kind of naturally has a chocolatiness to it. So I don't know if you guys are picking up on some of those flavors, but that'd be interesting. Okay, I've got a Rioja. And that wine is really tasty on its own. The milk and sparkling for the win, absolutely. The Rioja is really tasty because especially, I almost went geeky on you guys for a second, but I can get a fair amount of oak treatment in that Rioja. I know that because I taste caramel tones, I get some vanilla smells, and whenever you smell and taste those things, it's a pretty good hint that there's a lot of fresh new oak barrels that the wine has been aged in, and I got that, and that kind of matches the flavor profile of the milk chocolate. So this is a good moment. Okay, you just tried a Pinot Grigio, a dry rosé, and a Beaujolais side by side with a chocolate, and they were so different, each one. I know, this is so cool. This is the fun experimentation of how each one is so different. But I was gonna pause for a moment and talk to you guys a little bit about the principles of wine and food pairing, which is that some of the things that I look for whenever I'm trying to create a really good pairing is, for one thing, I'm looking for contrast in some way. Like for me, if I have a really lemony dish and then I get a really lemony wine, it's kind of too much of the same thing. And I think a perfect wine and food pairing is when 1 + 1 = 3, like kind of the sum is greater than the parts. So what I look for is contrasting flavors, contrasting textures, things that are just different but harmonious together that are going to go really well. So you'll hear me talk a lot about how I love the difference between the two things. And Beaujolais, which is even better with the milk chocolate, awesome, that's cool. I think that kind of goes for the same reasons that this Rioja is. There's less tannin in a Beaujolais than you're going to have in your Cabernet Sauvignon, which is that drying kind of structural thing that you get in red wines. And that might be one reason why a Beaujolais or a lighter red wine will go better with the milk chocolate, is you don't have as much of the bitterness, kind of. By the way, and that's my Cabernet Sauvignon. So I definitely get more of the bitterness with that, which will be really interesting when we get to the dark chocolate, because those are kind of like our more bitter chocolates. So I'm interested to see how that goes. So one thing, by the way, guys, I just wanted to tell you some insider tips. So I was looking for these wines, and I didn't necessarily myself want to buy 4 bottles of wine and keep them open for the next several days. So what I did is I went out and I bought this tiny, teeny little bottle of cava that's available, you know, in stores. If you go and you find a good wine store, I love stores that have smaller sized servings. And then for the rosé, I got this cool little can of rosé. I did a whole video about canned wine. If anybody's scared of canned wine, you can go see why it's actually okay. And this is a really good way of getting these kind of single servings of these wines. So I don't have a whole bottle of 4 different wines left over. You guys can check that out. Okay, so are you guys progressing? Does anybody have, by the way, does anybody have different wines than the wines we've mentioned so far? Because I can speak, even though I may not be tasting the same wine as you, I'd be happy to speak to it just from my knowledge of those wines and things like that. So if you feel like there's a wine or combination you're tasting and you're not really sure what to think about it, or you wish you had some vocabulary to be able to describe it, that's what I'm here for. So just ask me. Okay. All right. So now on to the next one. For me, that is the, I have a wine, or I have a chocolate flavored with Cabernet Sauvignon that I got, which I just thought was super interesting. But I can't actually smell, I can't smell any Cabernet Sauvignon. So I'm a little skeptical of that. But you guys should also have the one with the salt, some sort of salt to it. So depending on whether that's your sweeter one or the fruit one, probably your fruit one's a sweeter one, unless we went for a really dark fruit chocolate, then now would be a good time to be able to taste that. Okay, Tanya, so you guys, Avi, you have a Coteron. Okay, I'm going to talk about that. And you guys have a Cava, a Rosé, a Rioja, and a Cab. Amazing, Tanya. That's exactly my light up right here. We were in sync. So, Avi, you guys have a Coteron. The Coteron is going to have some of the same principles that I'm talking about with the dry rosé, because it is a lot of the same grapes. You know, it's from the south of France, like a lot of dry rosés, and you're going to get grapes like Grenache, Saint-Sauveur, Mourvedre, maybe even some Syrah if it's a high-class rosé, and a high-class Coteron. So those are wines with kind of like a juiciness, a berryness to them, sometimes a little bit of spice. And so that will be really interesting to try with your fruit chocolate. So if you guys haven't already, taste, you follow instructions well. Great, Tanya. Taste your fruit chocolate. See what you have going. I have an orange flavored chocolate. You guys also have a ginger beer. Oh, interesting. So that will be super interesting, like especially with your fruit one, because there you're introducing a whole other element of, well, of course the ginger beer has some sweetness to it, but there's like a heat factor from the ginger. So that's going to be really interesting. I would love to know what you find out. By the way, as you guys go along, when you're finding these really good tastings, as some of you are writing down, share them with all of us so we all get to know and we know what to go out and buy next time. Okay, so Rebecca bought dark chocolate with blackberry and acai. I'm so confused. I'm so confused. You're confused in tasting, or you're just confused at how that's a combination in the first place? That's amazing. Good. So this orange chocolate is like amazing. I love the combination of orange and chocolate. I'm finding the limitation of having so many wines and so many things to taste is I can't talk and do that at the same time. So excuse me. I hope you guys are all doing the same and tasting. Ooh, wow. This is so interesting. I don't know if any of you guys have this experience, but I tasted the orange with dark chocolate. And it was very different with all of these. And Siobhan, maybe this is what you were saying before. It's so different with all of these. But for me, there wasn't like a super clear winner. And there wasn't a loser either. Just I enjoyed all of them in different ways. So I thought that was kind of cool, because I think sometimes when I'm doing wine and food pairings, I'm always looking to maximize and like say, okay, which one is the best? And then just go with that. But maybe it's more of a looser thing than that, where, you know, depending on your mood that day and like what you really want, there's multiple combinations that could be really good for you. And okay, so Bryce says, Bryce and I have unfrosted, What is unfrosted dark chocolate with pink salt? Oh, with the rosé. Okay, amazing. So I'm assuming, what do you mean by unfrosted? Tell us, Leslie. Oh, unroasted. Oh, okay, unroasted. Perfect, good. Because I'm like, I don't know what unfrosted is. It must be a chocolate term I'm not familiar with. So you have unroasted dark chocolate. So that's really cool because chocolate, cacao, like grapes for wine, has a lot of different flavors that can come out based on where it's grown and soils and the climates and things like that. So when you get an unroasted version, it's just a little bit more pure in that sense. And so I would imagine that you're getting a lot broader of a flavor profile, or a lot of different flavors that you're getting out of tasting something unroasted. That's really cool. The rosé with the chocolate is super interesting. Yeah, because, well, I don't know why it's super interesting to you. So you can maybe tell me more about why you find it super interesting. But I forgot to mention that I specifically didn't choose a sweet wine for this tasting. A typical pairing for chocolate that many of you may have had is like Tawny Port or a vintage port, any kind of port with chocolate. If you go to like your wine tasting books and things like that, that's what they're going to tell you is a classic pairing. And it's good. The problem for me is that the port is so sweet that it always kind of overwhelms the chocolate, and I never get a better experience of the chocolate. And so what I found through doing some of my experimenting is that when I go for some of these drier wines, and especially the wines with that nice acidity, I like the back and forth better. For me, it's more interesting. So I don't know if you guys are finding that. Oh, it's so fruity. Okay, Himalayan salt and dark chocolate. Oh my God, delicious. I think somebody in my household, I have to say, ate all of my salted chocolate. So I had no more of that. Might have been a certain 5-year-old that we know. Okay, so dark chocolate with raspberry with a Rioja. Oh my God, that sounds like a perfect combination, because there you're picking up some of the berry in the Rioja, and then you've got the dark chocolate for the contrast. So that's interesting, because even within the chocolate, you can have some of that contrast. Your friend Naveen just arrived. He's going to try and catch up quickly. Perfect. Get him caught up. So it was just so unique. It brought out some flavors in the rosé that I wouldn't have noticed before. Almost savory notes in the rosé. Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's so true. And again, this is the cool thing to think about as you guys are going through and doing the tastings is like, what was my experience of the wine? What was my experience of the chocolate? And then afterwards, did the chocolate get better with the wine? Did the wine get better with the chocolate? Because they're kind of two different things. And like, this is always funny whenever I do a wine tasting with like a cheese expert. Sometimes I've done wine tastings with cheesemongers and things like that. And we always kind of have like a little rivalry, because my goal is usually to maximize the taste of the wine. So I think about a cheese that's going to contrast and everything like that. So when you keep going back to the wine, you don't miss out on any of the subtleties, the complexities of the wine. The cheese person is usually thinking about how do they maximize the flavor of the cheese. So a lot of times when you have like a really complex cheese or a really complex chocolate, you might just use the wine kind of as a backdrop or, like a contrast, but you might want like a very simple wine so that you could showcase all the complexity of the chocolate. So you guys can think about, as you're tasting, what happens to each one and what do I prefer? Like, what do I like to maximize for? If there's one thing that I really want you to be able to walk away from these tastings with me is to have a better understanding of what you personally like, and then a little bit of the vocabulary and things like that to be able to describe it so that you can get more of what you like. Like, that's really the goal if I had to sum it up in any way. So pay attention to, of course, what wine you liked, what chocolate you liked, what pairing you liked, but also that kind of like, which direction did it go for you? Like, was it that you really enjoyed a certain combination because the chocolate tasted much better, because the wine tasted much better, or was it really just that meeting point, that combination or synergy between the two of them that was like explosive and so interesting in your mind? Because if that's the cross section, I think you're really going to like some of the wine and food pairing stuff that I do, because for me, that's what I really love. I mean, yes, I like to showcase the wine, but I really, really just love it when you can hit that perfect combination for somebody that for them and their palate is just gonna like blow their mind. By the way, okay, one other thing I'll do is I created what I think is really cool is a choose your own adventure wine and food pairing chart that I made with my friend who's an illustrator. And I'll send you guys all that. Everyone who attended this tasting, I'm going to send you guys that for free so that you can check it out and do some of your own food and wine pairings after this. It's really cool. So, okay, let me catch up on the comments. So, Cote de Rhone with chocolate covered cantaloupe. That's a thing? Chocolate covered cantaloupe? Avi, guys, can you fax some of that to us? I mean, wait, Avi, where did you buy this? You've got to tell us because I've never, ever heard of chocolate covered cantaloupe. I don't even understand how it can work. Did you dip the chocolate? Oh, maybe you dipped the cantaloupe in the chocolate. Let's find out. Okay, so it brightens up both the wine and the chocolate and the fruit. Who knew? Okay, so it is now. I don't know what that means. So Krish is the dark chocolate guy at home. He's trying dark chocolate with raspberry with the rosé and the cava, and he feels a distinct taste similar to how Avi feels. Yeah. Oh, homemade. You guys did it. Oh, that's a great idea, Avi. I didn't even think of that. For the next one of these, I should send out like a recipe for home dipping and home doing your own things. It's a thing now, chocolate covered cantaloupe. Okay. Wow. I love it. I love it. And then Anusha's comment reminds me that I wanted to mention why we did the order we did, because I don't remember if I told you that we were going to start with the milk chocolate and we were going to go slowly up in terms of the, or we're going to go less sweet. Start out with the sweetest chocolate and go less sweet. Part of the reason that we're doing that is because as you go less sweet, the bitterness in the chocolate kind of becomes more pronounced and you get more of that. And once you get that bitterness in your mouth, same thing with the wines. This is why we save the more bitter red wines for the later part of the tasting. It's hard to kind of get that taste out of your mouth. The other reason is that I learned in researching this that when you go to sweeter things, when you go from something less sweet to sweet, our bodies register the sweetness most above everything else. So it would actually be more difficult to taste the other flavors in the milk chocolate, the sweetest chocolate, if we started with the darker chocolate and we went sweeter. Because once we hit that sweeter level of chocolate, we would be overwhelmed by the sweetness of the chocolate and we would miss out on some of the other things. So I thought that was really cool. I'm just so fascinated about how our bodies work like this and how we can play with it. It's kind of cool. So, and then of course on wines, you usually want to start out with the lightest wine and also dry typically, and then slowly progress to, you know, a red wine, maybe a lighter red wine, and then a heavier red wine. And then if you had a dessert wine or if you had a port or something like that, you would finish off with that. And that's just because, again, like the heavier wines, once you get to that, it's really hard to be able to go back and experience something very delicate. Okay, so Scott doesn't like my blackberry chocolate, but it's amazing with Cabernet. Okay, cool. And by the way, guys, if you have amazing, like if you discover a really great chocolate producer or something like that, then maybe like snap a picture of it and throw it up there. I don't even know if you can do that in the chat or share the brand with us. I have to say, I bring that up only because this dark chocolate that I discovered is amazing. I have no idea if you can get it in other parts of the country, but it comes from here. Oh, yeah, it's kind of hard to see. There we go. I'll send you a picture of this too, but it's a single origin chocolate. It's 72% cacao, and it's made here in Red Hook, Brooklyn. But the Dominican is the single origin of, and I don't have anything else to say intelligent about it. But what I will say is that it's just delicious because I like it for the same reasons that I love wine, which is that you taste it and there's just so much there. There's so much complexity. I mean, it's like, you know, if you guys are into poetry, if you're into music or paintings or whatever it is that you spend your time in your life appreciating, you find that when you start to learn more about something and more about something, and you can keep going deeper and deeper, and there's more to it and more complexity and more levels of it, then that's just really fascinating, right? So the same can be true of wine and chocolate. And I found that to be really true of this single origin chocolate. I was just like, whoa, there's so many flavors. I don't even know where to start with describing them, but I think there's a lot there that I would like to spend more time with. Okay, so here it is. God, wonderful. Faxed over some chocolate, covered cantaloupe. So Trader Joe's, the dark chocolate lovers chocolate bar, 85% is dry. Yeah. 85% is really high cacao level. I mean, I'm even tasting these 70%. I have one actually that's 92% that I didn't even bring out for this tasting because it was just too much. But once you get into 80%, and this is good for you to know too, it's like really, really chocolatey. All of our chocolates from the bodega, amazing, yeah. And good old Hershey's milk chocolate. I'm so glad somebody did that. I did that in my Halloween tasting video that I did back in October. I had like Reese's peanut butter cups and Hershey's chocolate and Twix and Kit Kat and things like that. And it was actually really fun to do that too. But as a result of that tasting, one of my viewers actually asked me like, hey, Dini, can you do something with fine chocolate? Like, we can actually talk about like artisanal chocolate too. I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I should probably do that as well. But that's a really good video when it comes around to your kids' Halloween candy. Okay, you have Lily's sugar-free, keto-free. Woohoo! I'm glad you found it. It must be vegan too if Siobhan has it. So 88% extremely dark, and they're salted almond. So we didn't talk much about the salted ones, but what are you guys finding with the salt? Because the salt factor in the chocolate totally changes things up a lot. So I'd be very interested to know where you guys gravitated with your salted chocolates. And I love, yeah, the Trader Joe's chocolates are just so good. But the salted chocolate, I think it was a salted dark chocolate that we had at Waterford. So there's a winery in South Africa that Anju and I went to in 2004 that's called Waterford Estate. And it is gorgeous, gorgeous winery in Stellenbosch. And we sat out in their courtyard and we sipped their Cabernet Sauvignon with their dark chocolate with sea salt on it. And I feel like that's the first time where our minds were just totally blown to, I mean, of course, the setting helped and everything helped, but it was really one of those moments of like, aha, like what, you know, what have we been doing all our lives? Like, this is such a delicious combination. Why it's funny to me why people don't talk more about the chocolate and wine combination. We always think of cheese or we think of foods and things like that. But when it comes to chocolate, people just want to slap on port and be done with it. But it's actually really interesting, I find, and really yummy. So, okay, let me see my notes. What have I not told you? Well, anything you guys want to know, please tell me. Oh yeah, we talked about why we tasted in that order. So, did we talk about why wine and chocolate work in general? I think I talked a little bit about acidity. By the way, if you guys haven't seen it, there's this really fabulous documentary on Netflix that's also based on a book. What's the woman's name? Yassin Nasrat. Anju will post her name. And she does this documentary series on salt, fat, acid, heat, right? All the basic components that she found in her years and years of cooking. She used to work in the kitchen at Chez Panisse and all sorts of famous restaurants. And she found that no matter where it was in the world she went and cooked and ate great food, whenever it came down to great food, it always came down to some balance between those basic flavor components to it. And I just thought it was super fascinating when I was applying it in my mind, everything she was saying to, yeah, salt, fat, acid, heat, to wine tasting, because I was like, yes, this is why wine makes so many things taste good, is that wine is very, if you guys think about back to chemistry class, our pH scale, things like that, but wine is on the acid end of things. And really for me, acidity is liveliness, it's freshness. And so you take any food especially when you go out for a rich meal. This is why, like the French food goes so well with wine. You take any dish where you have a bite of it and it's rich and it's delicious and so yummy, that first bite. And then as you eat it, you kind of get like what I would call palate fatigue. Like it doesn't taste quite as good as that first bite. Then if you introduce the right wine combination to it, it just refreshes your mouth. Like Anusha was saying in one of the comments before, like, oh, that cava was so refreshing with the milk chocolate. It was like a great experience. And so that is what I think the wine is doing for the chocolate in general, is it's adding that acidity that is kind of lacking in general. I mean, chocolate does have some acidity naturally to it. And especially as you get to the more bitter ones, you can feel it more. But I think that's one of the reasons why the combination works well. And then in the opposite direction, I think the chocolate kind of like, I don't know what it's a feeling. I don't have the exact words to describe it, but it kind of opens up my palate more to take in more of the wine. So I feel like with each bite and each taste of each thing, I'm kind of more ready and more excited about each other. So I think that's a sign of a good combination. So yeah, it was an awesome series, but don't watch it while I was hungry. Yes, exactly. A whole new perspective on sensations. So that's wonderful. Good. Okay, and then descriptors for the wines. Keep your wine open afterwards. Okay, no, I think that's good. So I guess at this point, I can pause. See if you guys have any other questions. I'll tell you that if I have to let me come up with some good takeaways of my tasting. I did more talking than tasting, frankly, but I did do a little tasting of this already in preparation. I have a video coming out tomorrow that just kind of summarizes the chocolate and wine experience. So I was thinking already of some of the takeaways of that. My biggest takeaway, the first one, is that for sure, the sweeter the chocolate, the drier and the more acidity I wanted in the wine. Because again, for me, I like sweet things, but I don't want it so syrupy and so sweet. So when I had the milk chocolate with the Cabernet, like the overall effect of that whole combination was still too heavy for me. It was a little bit too intense. It wasn't lifted up in that refreshing sense that I wanted. But as I got to the more bitter chocolates, then I felt like it a little bit overpowered the white wines. So the darker the chocolate got, then I wanted a more intense wine, and I kind of gravitated towards the red wines on there. So that would be my takeaway. Salt definitely also drove me to want to go to a drier wine, and I loved the Cabernet. I think for those of you who had the Shiraz, that would probably be also a good combination. And then for the fruit, I think, who was it? Tanya was saying that the raspberry dark chocolate and the Rioja was like a killer combination. And that's kind of where I would go with a fruity chocolate, is I might go there. And of course, since many times when you serve a wine, or, like if you were serving this at home for a snack, or, a dessert course or something like that, then maybe you wouldn't have multiple different wines for all the chocolates. So you can think about, for you, if you had to choose just one wine that worked best, or overall was the best with all the chocolates, what would that be for you? And you guys can even post that in the comments, because it would be super interesting to see. One of the questions I usually ask people whenever I'm doing live wine tastings with people, or in-person wine tastings, this is live, is that I always ask people, what was your favorite wine and what was your least favorite wine? And I ask everybody this before we get to the price points, because I never reveal the prices until afterwards. You guys all know the prices in this case because you bought the wine, but I ask that question. And the reason why I ask it is more to demonstrate to everybody at the tasting that people have different tastes. I have not been to a single wine tasting ever in my 23 years of doing wine tastings, and I used to do them weekly, where everybody liked the same wine and everybody hated the same wine. Everybody has different tastes, totally different tastes. So what this is about for you is really listening to your own tastes, listening to your own reaction to things, and choosing that so that you can find more of the things you like. Because when it comes to wine tasting, there's really not a right and a wrong. It's very personal. Everyone's saliva is different. We talked about how that has a different effect on how the wine tastes. So you truly do have a different wine than anybody else in the world does. So think about it that way. That's kind of cool. Okay, so Andrea, you had a dark chocolate peanut butter cup from Trader Joe's with your Shiraz. Not a fan. Yeah, that's true, because there's a saltiness to peanut butter, but peanut butter is also super, super sweet. So for the same reason that I was talking about the milk chocolate with the dark wines or the heavier wines, it may just be too cloying, like too intense, too heavy. I don't know. That would be my guess, but you can tell us better why you didn't enjoy it. Oh my God, 75% Cacao República del Cacao, raw salt, sea salt with Cabernet Sauvignon. Amazing. Salt enhances the chocolate flavor. It absolutely does. I mean, this is a beautiful thing. And by the way, too, I'll give you guys this little entertaining tip. Oh, by the way, Scott and Rebecca, post what it is that you guys call when you put out your cheese spreads and stuff like that. You guys call it something living, and I loved that term you guys used. But here's a tip for that. You can, just like people do cheese platters, you can take out a platter and you can put together a little chocolate board. And if you didn't already buy the chocolate with the sea salt, you could take the sea salt and you could sprinkle it over. You could take like a berry compote or a jam or whatever. You could put that on some of them. You could take some orange rinds, either candied or whatever, and you could sprinkle it about. So make your own chocolate platter. I don't know, this should be a thing. Maybe we'll do a video on that. Gracious living. Oh my God. Thank you guys, Rebecca and Scott. Beautiful. I went to a little gathering at their house and I loved how they did it. They call it gracious living. They put out, you know, what we always call like a picnic dinner of like cheeses and meats and breads and having the wine and everything like that. It's just like a really, I don't know, it's a really nice way to live. Everyone should be so lucky, right? So, okay, next time we'll purchase more wine and invite more people for a watch party. This has been so interesting. Okay, that's amazing, Andrea. I'm so glad to hear that. This has been really fun. If you guys have more questions about how to taste, what you're tasting and all that, please feel free to send it to me. I really do think about all those things, and that's how I make my videos. Pretty much every video I make is based on questions that people are asking me and all the things that come up as we're going along that. If you have questions, I may have already made a video about that. I've made like 50 videos now, so you can go back and look at the archive of all those on my YouTube channel. I'm gonna send you the food and wine pairing choose your own adventure chart. And there's a video that goes along with it if it's not super self-evident that you guys can use and check that out. I hope that'll be a good resource for you. Okay, Krish has a question. How do you store sparkling wine? Fabulous question. And Rebecca and I were just talking about this the other day. So I'm not gonna go and grab it right now, but I'll send you a picture of it. But there are these wine closures. Okay, I'm not gonna have Anju go sort through the drawer and get it. But if you know where it is, if you can find it in that drawer, that would be awesome because then I can show it to them. But it will, the beautiful thing about it is it'll go right on top of your bottle of sparkling wine and it'll keep the seal on it. And then of course you always want to keep it chilled. So I did a video on this too, but the 3 things that will deteriorate your wine after it's open are heat, light, and air. So keep out the heat by keeping it in the fridge. Keep out the light. Obviously, you're not going to have it sitting in the light. And then the air is the really, really key thing. And of course, when it comes to bubbles, you don't want to be losing all of those bubbles so quickly. So keeping it airtight is going to help as much as possible. Because a lot of the gadgets that I have, none of those, but that's okay. Oh, but give me this Vineyard Preserve. Yeah, a lot of the gadgets that I have, like this one is fabulous. So this is called something, what is the name of it? Vineyard Fresh Wine Preserve. You can buy these on Amazon. And it is an inert gas. So what you do is you just spray it on top of the bottle inside. and it will blanket the wine. And the great thing about it is, unlike CO2, it won't interact. Unlike carbon dioxide, it won't interact with the wine and get dissolved into the wine. So it'll just blanket it, protect it from oxidation from the oxygen, and keep the wine fresher a little bit longer. So that's another really good trick. Sorry, I couldn't find the little closure thing, but I'll send you guys a picture of that so you can see it. Wonderful, wonderful. And then I will post the link also for you guys. So this is the video all about how to keep your open wine fresh for 7 to 10 days. So now if you guys have a bunch of open wine and you didn't invite a whole party of people over to be able to drink it all, then you'll know how to keep it. For future reference, I also keep these every time I get a little bottle. I always keep those so that when I have a little bit of leftover wine or something, I can pour it into that easily and just screw on the top. That's what keeps out all that air in the bottles. So wonderful. All right. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for showing up and giving me part of your Wednesday evening, your Wine Wednesday. This was really, really fun. I've been looking forward to it all week to be able to do this. And I loved all of your questions. I love the chats back and forth. And I hope you guys will come back for more of these. Okay. Bye-bye.